Jaguar camp's getting physical. It should. It's time to see some hitting. We'll talk about that and some news and notes from practice this weekend. We'll do it right now on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for joining me today on Locked On Jaguars. I am Tony Wiggins, giving you all the news and notes from training camp today on Locked On Jaguars. And we thank you for joining us and making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. Reminder, we're free on all platforms because it's your team every day. Yeah, did I get all of that in? Good. Glad to be back. Had a little mini vacation, which I still stay in touch with all of the faithful listeners of this podcast. Because of my late arrival yesterday back in Jacksonville, I was not able to make that really, really physical Sunday practice that I've heard so much about. In fact, I was there today and everyone saying, man, you missed the day yesterday. It's like they were hitting and popping like they hadn't seen nobody hitting and popping like that since the Beat It video or the Beat It movie when Shabba-Doo and all of those guys were pop locking. So much popping going on at that field, I tell you. But I do have some information from those sessions, as well as some stuff I saw today with the physicality being ramped up a little bit. Good news about an offensive lineman and the way he's playing and practicing so far. And in the third segment, I want to talk about the running back situation. A healthy James Robinson and a healthy Travis Etienne, are they a top 10 tandem in the league? And is that another feather in the cap for all of the moves that were made last year that people went crazy about? But all of a sudden now it seems like it's something that's going to really, really pay off. But first and foremost, talk about return of a couple of players right in time for things to get physical. Folorunso Farusaki, the big, bulky defensive tackle who's very active in one of the biggest free agent signings, back, moving stuff around, moving furniture on the defensive line and helping out the defensive line hold down the fort a little bit after with what we saw earlier against Raiders. It seemed like they were really missing more than just the bodies and some of the guys. They were missing a mentality, and Fadusaki can definitely provide that mentality. Look good, big physical guy. I wouldn't say he's the most athletic defensive tackle they've had. Like he kind of moves a little tight, but he gives maximum effort, man. And he really does. When you put him in along with Devon Hamilton, you really see the difference in how big and how physical and how stout that defensive line could be. It's also good to see first round pick Devin Lloyd ripping and running out on the field today in those drills with no limitations. Only thing, you see him do, you see him constantly. When he's on the sideline, he's always stretching and sort of trying to make sure he keeps that hamstring loose, but he looks different than the other linebackers, even different than Chad Muma. Even though they were both, listed at like 6'2", 235, Devin Lloyd has long arms, just this overall athletic build. And Devin Lloyd looks like the real deal. No restrictions, like I said, moving around very well. Going to really, really give them, along with Foy Oluwakan, their other free agency pickup or addition that they signed out of Atlanta, who led the NFL in tackles last year. I think you're going to see a lot different style of play and movement with the three guys that I just mentioned, who were not involved and they weren't in the middle of things in the Hall of Fame game because they didn't play. This team's going to look a lot different when those guys are in the game. Now, I will say this. It was depth against depth in the Hall of Fame game. And even though the game plan, the game plan was very, very vanilla, it was still a little bit disappointing knowing that the depth guys for the Raiders are better than the depth guys for the Jaguars. It's just a fact. At this point, they're just better players, or at least they played better the other day. So you'd hope to see some improvement. One guy I did notice was Chappelle Russell, and he's number 53. I asked someone at the field today, did they notice? And they was like, nah, none of those guys really played well, so I ain't gonna pay attention to it. But for me, the significance of that is this: Chad Mumma's on this team. Chad Mumma is on this team, regardless. He's picked in the third round, high in the third round of this year's draft. He's on the team. Who's the fourth inside linebacker? Many thought that it would be Shaq Quarterman based on he's in the program. They seem to like him. He's a hard worker. Chappelle Russell, in my opinion, outplayed him. Go back and look at the film. Go back and look at the tape. And in my opinion, Chappelle Russell, number 53, got after it a little bit. Now, so I don't know how many people they're going to keep at linebacker. But if you go back and watch 53, actually, and then even in practice, he looks like a little bit of a different athlete. He's more twitchy. As bad as I want Shaq to make this team, and I think he does make it easily if they pick 5 interior linebackers, which would mean they would also be moving on past Terrell Adams, who they brought in, who's known as a special teams ace. But for me, right now, the guy who I would have the most confidence in being the third linebacker is Chappelle Russell, even more so over Chad Mumma. He's a rookie. He has to get used to it. Guy can't run around stuff. You got to take stuff heads on or heads up in the NFL and be able to run right through it. And that's very, very difficult for a rookie to do. So the physical part has started. You're going to see more and more from those guys. You'll learn more and more about them from the reps that we see in practice, and then whatever they're able to do in the football games for the rest of the preseason. But that's a position to watch. I took a picture of it today, and I posted it on social media because that's a very, very key position to watch. Once you get past those first 2 guys in Devin Lloyd and, of course, Foye Oluwakan, you have to have depth at the inside linebacker position. Plus, according to we've talked before about Mike Caldwell. Excuse me, I had something. According to Mike Caldwell, who played that position, that's a position that he really, really watches and monitors because inside linebacker was the position that he played in his position group that he coached for a long period of time. So we really, really, really have to, my allergies are killing me, y'all. We really, really have to make sure that we pay attention to the backups at that position because the depth of that position will be tested. We're going to talk more about the physical side of practice, but we'll move to the offensive line. And you know what? I got something I'm going to say about Cam Robinson, and it is something that is very good to say about Cam Robinson. And you guys would really want to stick around for that because there was a big debate about whether he was worth all the money. Well, I'll tell you in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars why that question has been answered so far. I have to tell you, though, about Dave. Dave is the banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That's more money to fill your tank, buy a gift, or catch up on bills. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without hangups. There's no interest, no credit check. None of that stuff is needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app, that's DAVE, to get the financial relief they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and need some extra cash, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Now, download the Dave app, like I said, from the App Store right now. That's DAVE. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. Get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve, member FDIC. And you're here with me, TIIGG. That's right, T-Wig here on Locked On Jaguars. I've been hosting the Locked On Jaguars podcast now I'm going on my 4th year, but I've been covering the team for over 10 years. And I've tried to always have my finger on the pulse of the team. And one of the things in the offseason that I discussed ad nauseum was fixing the offensive line and saying that I probably would have moved on from Cam Robinson. Well, I'm going to tell y'all right now, I probably would have made a mistake for moving on from Cam Robinson. It's a good thing that people in the building who have their finger on the pulse of the team knew what Cam Robinson was ascending to. I would guess that they probably consulted also with Coach Rauscher, who's the offensive line coach, and Doug Pederson. Look, you just don't 6'3" and 25-pound offensive linemen that are very, very adequate just don't grow on trees. And you can't just get rid of them, especially if the only alternative was to go into the draft and get a rookie. But if you get that rookie, you wouldn't have Trayvon Walker as a rookie. So why not keep the guy you already have, develop him, see what he has under a new coaching staff, and see if you can move beyond him just being adequate and him being a very good player. Newsflash, so far in training camp, he has looked lights out against both Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen. I don't think he's lost a rep. He looks every bit of a guy that's ready to turn the corner and play better and be better. And in fairness, last year, which was Trevor Lawrence's first year, Cam Robinson was banged up. So I always wonder how much better would he look with a better quarterback. So last year when he gets a more talented and better quarterback, the most talented player that he's ever seen at that position in college or pro, he wasn't healthy, so you really couldn't get a read and a good assessment. That's one of the things that I always talk about too when I mention baggage. My personal baggage about him underachieving, not being lights out at left tackle, carried over into a whole new regime, and I was even suggesting that they don't keep him. I would have regretted that, because if this guy that I see here in Jacksonville would be showing up at somebody else's training camp, playing the way that he's playing and looking like he's looking, or at least practicing the way that he's practicing, and practicing the way he is and looking how he's looking, it would have been egg on my face. Now, I posted a video of DJ Chark catching a long ball this weekend in Detroit's practice. DJ Chark caught long balls here. That's going to be another one we'll monitor to see if the Jaguars probably made a little bit of a mistake. I'll talk about the receivers in segment 3, but I would have absolutely made a mistake with Cam Robinson. Cam Robinson has been one of the 5 or 6 best players from practice that we've seen so far for the 2022 Jaguars. Now, he didn't play in the Hall of Fame game. I'm sure he'll get a few reps in the next preseason game. So will most of the guys who didn't play the other day. But it's still something worth noting. I mean, when you're right, you're right. When you're right, you love to tell people that you're right. In this situation, from the way it looks, I'm glad the Jaguars didn't do what I thought they should have done, which is move on and then just go ahead and draft you another left tackle. Yeah, you heard me. I'm trying to sit here and admit that maybe it's possible that they did something I didn't want them to do, but it worked out. I'm not too big to admit that. He's looked very, very good. He's been stout. His technique, he looks calm. I don't care who it is rushing, and they come running off the line all hard, and he's just like, yeah, bro, you ain't going nowhere. And I've been close enough to hear him and Brandon Sheriff, the new free agent acquisition for the Jaguars. They sit and chit and chat on the sideline, and you hear the confidence, you hear the leadership. You hear a guy, I talked to Cam Robinson when he first got to Jacksonville. He's always been a mature kid, but he sounded 21, 22 the first time I talked to him. Well, now he sounds and looks, his body's big, he's healthy, he looks like he's in better physical condition, but it's his mindset and his mentality and his approach that makes me believe the Jaguars got this one right, and I would have gotten it wrong. Y'all heard me. I said it, but it's the truth. I honestly believe the Jacksonville Jaguars got this right and correctly did exactly what they were supposed to do. So kudos to them, kudos to the Jaguars, and that bodes well for the Jags offensive line because if he's as good during the season, he can stay healthy, and he's as good during the season as he has appeared to be in practice, it is going to be lights out. Plus, it's good work for Josh and it's good work for Trevon to have to go up against a guy who is playing this way, and hopefully it continues during the season because that'll tell you that means in retrospect when you look back on training camp that these guys got good work in event against a very good football player. I know some people think I don't ever admit when I'm wrong. I probably was wrong about this one. Not that Evan Neal and those guys aren't playing well because I heard they are. That has nothing to do with it. It has everything to do. And by the way, I wasn't opposed to them drafting another tackle and playing him at right tackle. And Jawan Taylor and Walker Little have looked decent. I saw Jawan Taylor today back out on the field, and he's looked good. I probably would have done a little bit more on the interior, but they even addressed that. They said they like their guys on the outside, and so far in practice, I don't believe that there's a reason not to. Now, a guy that I used to always blame was George Warhop. Maybe George Warhop was the one who was holding them back. And maybe, Coach Rauscher is the guy to really, really get this team or get that group to be able to play like a top 10 group. Because right now, Cam Robinson looks real good. And I'm just telling you, in other situations where guys are losing reps and getting beat, he's not. And he looks confident. His body looks well. He looks healthy. So knock on wood that he stays healthy. But sometimes people say these players get money and then they aren't motivated. That's not the case here. Sometimes it looks like what it looks like today is this guy got paid and said, thank you, and I'm going to show you why I appreciate you paying me. So kudos to Cam Robinson, and ain't nothing wrong with admitting that you ain't always right. It's like me, I wasn't right this time. But I'm going to tell you where you should be right, and that is on BetOnline.net. Why? Because all the information is right there. And it's quick and easy. It's the fastest and easiest way for you to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find rare reviews and news of every single league, including baseball. Yankees lost 5 in a row. I don't want to talk about it. Don't say nothing to me about that. NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you covered. Head to BetOnline today to use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today because BetOnline is where the game starts. You guys start here with me on Locked On Jaguars, making me and us your first listen here every day, and we are eternally grateful for that. Glad you could join us, reminding you that it's your team every day and we're free on all platforms. Also, don't be shy about looking at the Locked On NFL podcast. I'll be there this Wednesday. I wasn't there last Wednesday because I was on vacation. The Locked On NFL podcast is where you can find your daily fix of everything that's going on in the NFL. And it's also free on all platforms. And you got to make Locked On Fantasy Football your second listen along with Locked On NFL. Locked On Fantasy Football is the truth. Because when you need to know about the difference between PPR, dynasty leagues, and all that stuff, there's no better place to find an intellectual fantasy expert, Vinny Iyer, who brings over 20 years of NFL expertise and a unique angle to give you all the moves that no one else has. Get your fantasy draft with Locked On Fantasy Football. I'm going to tell you what's real and what's not a fantasy. What's real is the fact that Jaguars have 2 really good running backs. I saw James Robinson running around today, and even though he's coming off of an Achilles injury that happened last year, it looked like he's going to be a little bit he's going to be more ready to play than I initially thought. I was thinking James Robinson probably was going to be ready until the middle of the season. James Robinson might play week 1 with the way that he's looking. I don't know if they'll do it, but he looks like he's ready to go, and soon, because he looks like he's running full speed. It looks like he's doing a little cutting. I think the next thing is you have to first see him in a little bit of live action. I don't know if they're going to get to that in the preseason. And if they don't, at some point, I think you'll see James Robinson before the first 6 games of the season. But with him and Travis Etienne, who also has never played a down in the NFL, he's coming off his rookie campaign where he had to sit out. So technically he's a rookie this year. He had a Liz Frank injury in his foot. And of course, Snoop Connor is the draft pick that probably not set in stone, but pretty much is set in stone that he's the number 3 back on the team, will probably be a number 2 while the Jaguars decide at what point they're going to bring back James Robinson. But listen to me, man. Let me explain. If they are healthy, I believe they have a top 10 tandem in the NFL. Now, I know folks are going to bring the Jets and they're going to bring up the Broncos. Of course, they're going to bring up Cleveland, even though one of those guys wants to get traded. They're going to bring up Dallas, probably the Chargers. And even with LaMichael P. Ryan backing up Joe Mixon, I think you have to bring up the Bengals. There are some nice tandems in the NFL. I think the Jaguars tandem, when they're healthy, could be one of those tandems. Could be a top 10, top 12 tandem because of, one, the I call it the yin and the yang, the explosiveness of Travis Etienne to go along with the vision and the hard-nosed running and the lean of a James Robinson. James Robinson is not a small man. He's just short. He's 5'9", 5'10". I'm not saying he's Maurice Jones-Drew. He's not built like a fire hydrant, but he is not a small guy. And you can actually see why he's so hard to tackle when you look at him close up, because the dude is like a walking muscle, okay? He's a big boned little guy, if that makes sense to you. And you can understand and see why he's a guy that's hard to tackle and why he gets a positive lean after contact that makes him so difficult for teams to play against. You mix him and Travis Etienne, who has been very, very explosive, who catches the ball out of the backfield, who runs between the tackles, who gives you a little bit of a mismatch if you line them up in the slot. I can't even imagine what it would be like if both of them were on the field at the same time. Yeah. I think when they're healthy, they're a top 10 tandem. But what do we always talk about here? We talk about demonstrated performance. They have to go out and show it. They have to go out and prove it. And they have to be healthy in order for them to actually sit up in the minds of people as a top 10 tandem. But I'll tell you what, they got a real good shot. They have a real good shot, especially with the improved play on the offensive line and with Trevor having more weapons and threats. Quick news and notes from today. Trevor Lawrence was pretty sharp again today. Zay Jones caught everything in sight. Everything in sight. Christian Kirk made some nice plays. Also, Evan Ingram had a one-handed snag, and then he snagged in drills. He snagged a deep ball that was dropped into his belly in the corner of the end zone from about 45, 50 yards out. So the new additions, not the Candy Rain, Can You Stand the Rain new addition, the new additions to this team this year had a pretty good day. They had a pretty good day. They looked the part. They looked like they're going to step up, and they really, really appeared to be embracing the reason why so much money was spent on bringing them in. All of those guys played well. Dan Arnold looked good today. He limped off a little bit. I don't think it's anything serious, but Dan Arnold had a couple of nice catches today as well. And this Cotton guy, let me tell you about, he might be one of the people that you look up, and he's challenging for that 5th or 6th receiver spot. I want y'all to remember Cotton, the wide receiver for the Jags. He had a nice catch in the Hall of Fame game, but he had some nice catches before that in practice. So something to keep your eye on. Keep your eye on here on Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you check us out, because we will be here again tomorrow, because it's your team every day. We're going to talk more, and we're going to talk about Trevor Lawrence a little bit and how he appears to have changed a little bit from his approach, from his mentality, and how the year being removed from college really, really has helped give you a glimpse of exactly what he is probably going to be capable of doing in the NFL. We'll talk about that and more on Locked On Jaguars as training camp 2022 continues. But we're glad that you joined us today, and we appreciate it. Do what I always say, do. Please take care of each other. We'll see you on another edition of Locked On Jaguars.